All right, welcome everybody to Table Talk RPG Episode 6, the Twitter Spaces podcast where we talk all things Andrews Windmill Publishing, Blackbirds RPG, and everything coming down the chute from MU TTRPGs. We're really happy to have Joseph Limbaugh here with us. Thank you so much for joining us from Blackbirds.
I am happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time. So we've had a couple different guests on the show so far talking over Blackbirds. Jared was on a little while ago. Daniel's been on, and it's been really fun to kind of examine all of the different people that made this project up and that made this game up, and how they brought all their unique backgrounds into building out the lands of Erebos that we see. So I wanted to start this out just by asking you a few questions just about your own background, and getting to know you a little bit better, if that sounds cool.
That is totally cool. That's why I'm here.
Absolutely. So for people who aren't familiar, Joseph is an incredible writer in the TTRPG space, both as a writer and an editor, and is also, from what I understand, you teach improv to lawyers?
Yes, that is it's one of my I guess side hustles. They're all side hustles if you're an artist. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I teach improv to lawyers. I've been part of a personal injury case many years ago when I was in Atlanta. I got hit by a car in a crosswalk, and my lawyer was not very good that I had. And I think when you get older, you realize that you want professional people, doctors, dentists, lawyers. You want them to be good, and a lot of them are not. So you have to find some that are good. But my whole thing is I want them to be better at their jobs. I want them to be good at what they do, and you can go through law school and get a, it's very difficult. Like I'm impressed with anybody who goes through that entire process. It's very, it's very challenging. There's a lot to learn. The law is very complicated, but you can come out at the end of that process and be unable to talk to people. And so, or communicate well. So that is what I want, is them to be better communicators. I really want everyone to be better communicators. I think that improv is something that, this is going to sound like hyperbole, but I think it makes people into better human beings. And, I honestly believe that. I think everybody should learn some improv. So that's the spiel.
Very cool. Improv, I feel, is a skill is really useful for so many different scenarios, and both in reality and also in in the world of Blackbirds, being able to improvise very quickly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Something that makes both playing and building out games like this a lot easier.
Definitely, yeah.
How are some ways that you feel that you brought that background to Blackbirds? Improv obviously is an art that improves both communication and really kind of our ability to convey ideas and tell stories. Absolutely, but in the aspects of Blackbirds that you created, how do you think that influenced what you built and what you created?
Well, I think I was trained by a guy called Keith Johnstone, who's been around for a long time. There are schools of improvisation, and all of improvisers, they all talk about story and narrative. But I feel like Johnstone, his kind of holy grail was figuring out what is a story, what makes a story compelling. So that sort of knowledge of those techniques. Tilting is kind of the big one, but status, it's because I think if you ask most people like what's a story, they have like a kind of a not very good answer. Like they'll be like, it has a beginning, middle, and an end, right? Well, a snake has a beginning, middle, and an end. Like that doesn't tell me anything about what a story is or what makes it compelling. And I think Johnstone, he's quite old. He probably will not be with us much longer, but he's just really has some amazing insights on what it is that that makes stories so important to us. So I used a lot of those things, trying to put story hooks into the game. For me, it's like a good game supplement or a good game will have things that make you go, oh, that I want to explore that, like narratively, like there's a lot of those things. And that definitely was always on my mind. And I think, Ryan definitely supported that a lot. And for all of us, it was just like, hey, let's throw a bunch of story hooks into this game. And to me, that's very exciting.
Absolutely. And I love the term story hook as a literary or narrative device, because it really is exactly what it says on the label. It's something that sinks its hooks into you and intrigues you and makes you want to explore what you're reading further. When you think about the games, when you think about the narrative that draw you in, or the ones that you're attracted to, or the ones that, whether it's books, games, media, whatever it is, what do you look for in particular in a story that makes it stand out to you, or that you personally gravitate towards?
That's a really good question. For me, a story, the hero or heroes are in danger in some way. It's like one of Johnstone's early definitions of a story is you set up a hero and then you torture them, right? You torture them, and that's that. I think you have to be willing to go through some sort of even imaginary trauma is very difficult for people. But I think that ability to realize that it's not necessarily always a hero fantasy. It's like I love the sort of stories where the protagonist has not a very clear chance of succeeding, or the odds are very much against them, but they try to do it anyway, and maybe they don't fully succeed, but they make they make the world a little bit of a better place. Because for me, that's very real to the world that we're in now. I also like a little bit of a superhero fantasy as well. I do like that idea that you're going to have to kind of go through the darkness, to get anywhere.
Absolutely. I think that it's interesting that you really define story as overcoming a danger or a trauma, and I think that there's that definition of storytelling, which is you take a man and you give him glum.
Yeah.
And I think that scales interestingly in Blackbirds, because something that is so omnipresent in Blackbirds is the oligarchs, and are these kind of otherworldly forces that are so large and uncomprehendable. So like the problems are already there
Yeah.
to a certain degree, and
Yeah.
like the threat is so omnipresent there. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about in writing Blackbirds, but just kind of in general when you think about storytelling, how you look at scaling that danger, how you make it seem approachable when it's on the scale of things like the oligarchs versus being a peasant in the lands of Erebos, and you cut your finger and you have a really nasty infection. These are both present dangers. I wonder if there's a little bit of a difference in how you define those.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at the oligarchs on the face of it, you would say, well, no one stands a chance against these powerful beings that have ascended to godhood. It's like I wouldn't give odds to most people, but blackbirds have that spark of fate, so they have a chance, and I think that is the scale of this sort of a story. Is I have a chance to at least slow down these things, if not stop them. And that is the idea of the game, like that huge struggle. And to me, it kind of it's very similar. Like I'm a huge fan of the Call of Cthulhu game, and I love that it's a similar sort of scale where you have these alien deities from another dimension that are invincible, but who's up against them? A few librarians and a college professor. Like it's kind of similar. It's I'm gonna try to rise up against the face of God and hopefully make at least a dent. And to me, that's inspiring. It's because I do feel like many of our challenges in the world we live in now are very similar. It seems like we can't make it. It seems like one person can't do much, but if we try, well, maybe we can do something. And so that's inspiring to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I like a lot about Blackbirds, is there is kind of this notion of struggle and hope against things that feel inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that there is intrigue in that, and I think that there is a relatability of narrative in that, especially with everything going on now. And I think it interplays really interestingly, both in game and outside of it, just kind of in the writing world, with the notion of what fate is and what finding your fate means, and having the notion of these ideas of things that are predetermined potentially, but you have the spark and ability to change them.
Yeah, it's a lot about free will. I mean, the fact that blackbirds have a spark of fate means that they kind of have a little more decision over what fate is. They control a part of fate, really, what the outcome will be.
Yeah, fate's a really difficult thing to define, I think, just as both an archetype just in general in storytelling, but in Blackbirds in particular, it takes on such a really interesting incarnation, both in the way of it being kind of a physical mover of objects in the world, and also kind of an intrinsic ability or an intrinsic feature of the players, of the Blackbirds themselves. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you've obviously been with the game super early, what the process of determining what fate was going to be and how it was going to play into the events of the game was.
I mean, a lot of that was came from Ryan, and then also the inspiration is Zweihander. But I think I love the way that Ryan kind of put fate into. I mean, it was in his original concept, but the way that fate became a aspect of the game, and it's to me it's just very intelligent. It's really a smart kind of design and story development, that fate is with players' hands. Because I think that's a lot of with a lot of fantasy stories, there's this idea that's like, oh, we know what's going to happen. We know the One Ring is going to get tossed into the cracks of doom. We know, but from the players' perspectives, they don't know that that's necessarily going to be true, and it isn't necessarily true. They could fail at that, but the idea that the fate is in their hands, that they all have a piece of it, makes a lot of sense. It kind of justifies this idea that you would have any group of fantasy adventurers trying to go up at oligarchs. It's like, because if they were just regular, first level fighters or whatever, like just a bunch of schlubs, like that would be impossible. But no, you've been given this tiny spark of fate. Sure, it's not all of the fate that is possible. It's just a piece of one of the Norns. It's a piece of a god, kind of, and you've got it inside of you, and it gives them a chance to do something. So it balances the scales, but it's also a really great kind of justification for any chance that they would have to succeed.
Mm-hmm. I think it interestingly gives people a little bit more of a sense of consequence to the choices that they make in game.
Yeah, and it's like an extra life too. I mean, that's the mechanical aspect of it. Is you can die once and survive because you have fate. It allows you also to create a very dangerous universe. It's up to you if you want to. You can make a risky decision that might kill your character once per session, theoretically, if you get your fate back. But yeah, it does create a weight to your decisions that I think while still giving what we call it a lot the illusion of cruelty. It's like, yes, Blackbirds is a very dangerous world. Characters can die, but you have this get out of jail free card, that allows you to keep going if you take that chance.
Yeah, it's almost a double-edged sword of empowerment and peril.
Yeah,
that really exists within the game, and it is. I love and have loved since it was first tossed around the notion of the illusion of cruelty.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great concept. It's a good, Ryan had a few things that when we were working on the game that just really helped with the design process as far as keeping us all on track, for what the game was about, the theme of it really, which I don't know. I wonder, I mean, I'm sure everybody talks about it, but I just feel like those, few sentences, guiding sentences were really useful.
They were definitely fundamental to what the game is and how it stands currently. Do you think that there are any other aspects, at least to you, that really, really define or set apart Blackbirds as a game?
I mean, one of the other things Ryan said was, feel free, be pretentious, which, on its face, you'd be like, why would someone tell that to the developers of a game? But it really kind of empowered us all to, because pretentious means like, I'm going to make the game I want to make, right? And we all were able to do that. And also, it sets the bar kind of low. Like, we're not trying to make something perfect or, or like the best game in the world. We're trying to make a game that we would enjoy. And I think that, once again, as a design principle, it was very valuable to say that. And it helped a lot.
Definitely. I love the idea of making stuff that's fun and that's fun to the people that are making it.
Yeah.
I think you have so much more potential there than working with a much more stringent set of constraints. And that is something that, in just looking through the book, you can tell that so much of the art and so much of the writing and so much of the concept that's put forth by it is really just stuff that was knocking around in people's heads for a long time that they loved.
Yeah, it's the opposite of a focus group tested game, really. It's a game we made for ourselves.
Yeah, and in doing so, it really, really created such both a cohesive world and one that feels really unlike anything else. That being said, I would love to get a little bit more into some of the specifics of the game. In particular, and looking through, I've got this great big absolute doorstop of a book.
It is a hefty tome. It is
yeah.
Very big.
I've got the Servants of the Gods one open too, so it's currently bracing my computer. Looking through it, it's easy to get overwhelmed just with the amount of content in it. But what really, really stands out overall is that everything that is in the book really feels like it should be there because it supports everything else. I think from the theurgy system to the monsters, everything really works really well in tandem, which is something that I think is really cool, given that it was such a product of so many people's ideas that were incredibly fun in an esoteric way. And they're so very fundamentally, the creations of the people who made them, they harmonize in a way that's really, really nice. I wonder if you could answer this question in two parts, but whether it's either monsters, mechanics, or writing in the book in particular, narratively, What's something that you in particular contributed that is a favorite of yours in the entire book, and what is something that somebody else contributed, be it writing whatever it is that stands out to you the most?
I mean, I would say like I'm going to take the second one first because for me the art and specifically the having being able to come up with something with words and then watching an artist you know create that visually is I don't know, there's something just so satisfying about that. Like it make because I'm not a visual artist, like I'm a writer, and having and I think for a lot of artists, like watching someone else's skill set, it's kind of just like watching a magician do something, or a sorcerer, like not even like a magician, like someone who does stage magic, but someone who I watch people who create visual art, and I'm just like, that's amazing to me. It's outside of my skill set, and so it's having watching that, and all of the artists really just inspired me every time they dropped something. My jaw kind of dropped as well. It was it really helped keep the momentum going, and it was great.
It's incredibly fun to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, the art in the book is so awesome. Like from the maps to the monsters. It's like I could list many artists, but they all really they inspired me very much, and and I'm very proud of like that aspect of it. So I guess that would be the answer to the second part of your question. As far as the first part, it's kind of hard to say. I'm very proud of the magic system. Like I'm really glad that the theurgy was something that honestly, like, obviously a huge fan of role playing games. I've been playing them since the 80s, and like the magic system was kind of why I was brought on to work on Blackbirds originally. Ryan was like, "Hey, why don't you pitch me a magic system? And if I like it, then I'll bring you in to work on this book." And I pitched him kind of the magic system that in my mind for decades I had been working on. I was like, I've always wanted a magic system like this in a role playing game. And so that that's kind of what it was. This idea that it's like you're like medieval monks that summon these named creatures from the other side and get specific powers from them. And it's inspired by a lot, but I think people seem to like it. And yeah, I'm very proud of it. Like it was really fun to work on and put those ideas into a game. Finally, instead of just having them bounce around in my head.
Mm-hmm. It's something that I love is it really does, and I said this before, but just to echo it, so much of this game really does feel like things and concepts and like really high level concepts that have been knocking around in people's heads for a long time.
Yeah,
that they finally found the perfect place for. Let's delve a little bit more into the magic system and a little bit more into kind of theurgy in general. It's a really tall order to come up with a totally unique magic system.
yeah.
It's an even taller order to do it in a way that feels cohesive with this world where magic is such like a quagmire after the destruction of the Norns. So when you begin to do this, when you to create a whole unique magic system, especially for people listening to this who may be new to game design or who may be interested in getting started, do you look at it more from a conceptual level of like, yeah, we'll have spells that can do this, there'll be different classes of this, or is it more from a mechanical angle of like, this is how it's going to work from a play perspective?
I mean, for me, it was neither. Once again, like for me, it's like, what's an interesting story hook? And I think it's having a little demon companion show up and like that you can talk to. Like for me, it's because as a game master, I love any opportunity to play a fun NPC, and it's like so being able to play the outsiders as they're interacting with theurges is like for me, it's an opportunity. It's like that's something as a game master, be like, that's fun. I want to do that. So that's kind of for me where a lot of the impetus comes from. That. And also, like that, these that theurges have to have this ongoing relationship with these creatures and negotiate for powers and fighting with the outsider today, and so you don't get your spells. So maybe you have to use like one of your lesser outsiders. I mean, the whole idea of having these relationships and having that being connected to the powers to me is a giant story hook. There's just a lot of opportunities there, and that's so then writing the mechanical part of it. Actually, I mean, I do a lot of writing game mechanics. To me, it's not as difficult. It's like once you have that, like building out the system is just you just kind of do it, and then you adapt it, you adjust it, and you kind of fine tune it. Like I think a lot of this get like to write stuff down, to create the system, and then take feedback, be willing to adapt it, be willing to adjust. I think one of the biggest things in theurgy was when I realized the concept of tithe. would be much better as a game mechanic than what we previously had. Previously, you had to perform a reckoning every time you used a deviation. That was and it was kind of clunky and would have slowed down play. And so when I thought of Tithe, I was like, that's much cleaner. That's it's going to make the game better, and it still is completely in line with the idea of what the outsiders are and what they want from the players. So I think, just being able to adapt your vision, being able to adjust it, listening to other people and their input is really helpful. But writing it first and then coming back and rewriting later. A lot of it very similar to comedy. I think a lot of the work is in the rewriting. It's like you got to be willing to go back and polish things and adjust things and make sure all the pieces fit together. Don't be so connected to something you've created that it's like you're gonna like put your heels down and say, no, it can't be changed, it's perfect. It's perfect as it came out of my brain, because it's after that you find that you really find the best stuff, is when you're rewriting and fine-tuning stuff.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I am the worst person in the world, just personally, about having a very high level concept or whatever it is and being so married to it and being like, no, it's going to be exactly this.
You're in good company. A lot of artists are that way, though. Like, a lot of them. It's a challenge with us,
Mm-hmm. It's something that I think was so great about this team is that it really was made up of people that were very good at coming up with and very good at having an absolute multiplicity of ideas and of concepts, but being able to work them into this universe in a way that feels cohesive, which is something that I feel is such a challenge, just individually as a writer, but also when you're working with a team of so many other people from such a wide variety of different professions and backgrounds, that it really created some really, really cool narratives. A little bit more delving just into theurgy from the narrative perspective, is you were writing those initial hooks and those story ideas, and the idea of having the outsiders that you talk to in order to perform any of the magic in this world. Dude, what were some places that you drew inspiration from there? I know that like every single person working on this is like has their own occult library and is interested in folklore and really the history of the way that magic and kind of the world of occultism operated for a really long time. So I wonder if there were some individual pieces of folklore, or if there were some individual pieces of history that might have inspired some of theurgy as a system.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's several medieval manuals for demon summoning, and they have I've always been really, I think I forget the name of the big one right now. It's slipping through my mind, but that they have like the pictures of the demons and the specific names, and then the power. That's it, yeah. And yeah. they have the powers that are offered by those demons. It's like a bestiary and it's just like this is this demon and this is what they offer. Like just list it out like it's a real thing. That was very inspiring to me. I will also say the Stormbringer role playing game from the 80s, based on Michael Moorcock's Elric series, was inspirational to me too, because that magic system was based on summoning stuff. It was a really gonzo, like crazy 80s game magic system where if you were a magic user, you could make yourself super powerful above and beyond everybody else. Like there was no balance in there at all, but it was still like the idea that you would have to like sit down and draw a circle on the ground and chant for a while and summon this creature to get. I think to me that was definitely inspirational. I think there's some other games too that have done stuff similar. So, but I do feel like a lot of aspects of theurgy are unique. So those I think would be my two biggest inspirations.
Yeah, the Goish is a great one.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to it, and the other edition of it that got put out, I think it was the Dictionnaire d'Infernal was the French edition, where it had descriptions of all of them. And it really, I love seeing the mix of it now that you mention it too. Because so much of all of that was just like, if you want to like find a treasure that's buried underground, or if you want to
the powers are so so specific. I love like you want to find a treasure underground. If you want to like build a tower or what, like they're so
this guy knows where gems are. Like this guy, like if soil's really bad, this guy's your guy.
Yeah.
So it's like you have your shopping list initially of what you want your powers to be.
Yeah.
And then who you're going to proposition with a deal to maybe potentially get those. So that's really, really fun. Are there any of the outsiders in particular that stand out to you, or that you personally wouldn't tangle with, or that you lend to players as far as a good outsider to pair with initially?
I mean, the Dual Hound I think was very popular. I mean, if I was going to, I think everybody liked Tremis, the Dual Hound. My favorite is Flibbertigibbet. just because I love puppets and I think puppets are super creepy and also magical. So that's probably my favorite one. But I mean, I don't think I personally would knowing what I know about them, I don't think I would deal with any of them. Like they're all every one of them. It's a poison deal, no matter how you look at it. It's gonna probably not work for you. Um, I don't know. There is kind of the long term idea that, like, even though these creatures do not have your best interest in mind, and they have plans for you that will probably result in your downfall. The idea that you might, like bring one of them to a place where they actually care about you, or they do have where you form a relationship where it's like, you know what, you're you're okay. I think is an impetus, but probably possible. But I don't know. It's but yeah, the idea that you might, you know, save one of these creatures, or I don't know. If that's kind of a tangent, but
Yeah, no, I think it is a tangent, but I think it's a tangent that perfectly well into the game itself, which is exactly what we were talking about earlier with story hooks. Is it really makes it so much more fun for the game runner uh, and for players, because if you're entering into a Faustian bargain with an outsider that's played by a particularly clever DM, having to sit and kind of bargain and outwit and have like the exact wording in a potential contract, that's really fun to me. Um,
yeah, and the
I love,
possibilities for like where reckonings might go, like you might think that you're doing something. Oh, he just wants me to, you know, drill a hole in this wall, and then it's later that it turns out that someone gets murders of the hole you drilled in the wall. I think there's a lot of potential for shenanigans there too.
Absolutely. I'm obsessed and always have been with the idea of like the Zoltar cabinet, or just like the Twilight Zone episode where
Oh yeah,
you get told to do something really, really simple, and you're like, yeah, if you want fame and success, all you have to do is like set this pen down on the table, and because of it, somebody slips and falls over and dies or whatever it is.
right.
So those are such fun opportunities. They're already built in, but also that you get to really kind of create on your own. And then I hope the people playing, the people game running get to explore a ton, because really embodying the outsiders is something very, very fun, and something that you can really, really delve into, being as sinisterly clever as you want to.
Yeah, there's kind of carte to take that and run with it. And we definitely, I mean, as we designed all of them, I think we wanted them to be something that would be fun for Fate Weaver to play, for the Fate Weaver to embody. I mean, I'm an improv person, so it's like if I'm creating a character, I'm going to create a character that I think I want the game master or the Fate Weaver to really enjoy performing.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime I get to do voices, this is 100% what I'm here for. So if doing voices is a selling point, like, I'm buying 80 copies. I 100% agree with that. Anytime I get to be somebody else in a way that people get to interact with, it's really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great fun things about these games in general, is getting outside yourself and being able to explore other aspects of your personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And wow, there's some aspects of your personality you should explore as an outsider. Something maybe you don't want to explore, but get to anyway. It's so fun reading through them and reading through them. As Jared Rosen described on the show a few episodes ago, it really is in a way a demon dating simulator, because you get to kind of swipe through until you is going to shape your mortal coil over the next set of sessions.
Yeah, that was our internal joke. That was exactly how we had the demon dating simulator.
Yeah. And I love it. You really do get to pick and choose who you want to hitch your wagon to, in a way.
We give you some options. We give you some options. I think, yeah. And we're working on a new court now, so there's like 3 more outsiders coming down the pike. So,
something that I really love about the outsiders in the magic system, and something that I find so interesting about Blackbirds, is that a lot of the narrative and a lot of the mechanics as well really re-emphasize the game. The power in this world is really, really transactional, both just from exactly what we just talked about with theurgy, but everybody who's kind of up and down ladder of the chain of authority or power within Blackbirds is dealing with these constant battles of either concession or attainment of more or more ability. And all of the decisions that you're making within this world, this is true of Zweihander as a system too, is that there's consequences to your actions. And I think it's something that Theurgy in particular, but the rest of the game took so much further. and it's something that really sets Blackbirds apart from kind of traditional tabletop games like D&D or like Pathfinder, where it's simultaneously a little bit more forgiving, but also you're not really a superhero. In Blackbirds, you're somebody who's been touched by this spark of fate and this compellingly otherworldly power. But at the same time, every little bit of ability or every little additional magical ability or additional bit of strength you have to find on your own. It's something that you have to afford. It's something that you have to find. It's something that you have to struggle for. And I think that it's simultaneously really interesting from the ability to create plot hooks that way, because somebody's arm turns into candle wax, and then because the spell goes wrong, and there's your next session.
Yeah.
You have to deal with your friend that has a candle arm now. But I think that it makes role playing more interesting. It makes role playing more interesting when you have to really, really examine all of your actions a little bit more closely, and you have to really examine the outcomes of the things that you're doing to, be able to set somebody on fire with your brain, or swing a sword better, or acquire the money that you need to over a bridge to get into this next town.
Mm-hmm.
I love that from a challenging perspective, but I also love that it makes you feel like you're interwoven into this narrative, and interwoven into these threads of fate that are crisscrossing the lands of Erebos, because everything you're doing is touching everything else. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the idea of, in traditional gaming, you have kind of a very zoomed in perspective of things most of the time, unless you're, in a game that's been running for like 5 or 6 years and there's multiple countries, there's diplomacy, whatever it is, it's set up. But you get the opposite of that in Blackbirds. You get a very, very large perspective of which you're a very small piece, versus in most traditional games, even in video games and tabletop, where you are the protagonist and everything revolves around you, having this sudden notion of it being the opposite almost. And I wonder if you could talk about writing from the perspective of having this great big interconnected world where you're very smart, versus the traditional hero's journey of this a superpowered protagonist or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously by design. And I think it comes a lot from the fact that we had these weekly meetings and we talked about the world. We all were all very well versed in Blackbird's lore and this giant tapestry that is this world. And as we really did, as we created it, we were weaving it together and connecting systems, and we were talking to each other. And it's like, hey, what if the outsiders were like this, or they're also connected to this. The outsiders are connected to this oligarch, and then they're also connected to the sigilists, and what are the sigilists, and what is the history of this. And so like everything was designed, like we didn't just like throw together a weird creature and then it just exists, although maybe one or two, but but everything was designed to kind of fit into this whole thing, and it was all designed to fit into this interconnected weaving. Really, the whole thing is a giant tapestry that's all connected together. Like we didn't just drop systems in. We were constantly in conversation, and it was really inspirational. Like it was honestly, it was a very inspirational creative endeavor, because everybody helped everyone out, and because we were very, it was honestly very, it was like improvisational in a lot of ways. We did yes and each other. We did ideas from other people bounced off, and plus the ideas that we had, we made each other's ideas better. But yeah, this idea that this world is, you're kind of down on your luck, and you're running from one thing to the next, and there's not a lot of sitting back and like, I'm gonna buy a manor house or build a castle and just hang out here for a while. No, it's like it's one danger to the next. It is in the kind of the world itself, and the stories that Black Inspires was designed to do that. And I think it does work very well in that way. The patronage system, for example, that there's no you don't just sit around and accumulate money. You have to work for someone, which is very narrative, and it comes it comes from a lot of the Three Musketeers, or Berserk, all the inspirations for this for this world. It's in a narrative world, you don't have generally have characters like, and then I made $3,000 and I invested it in this thing. It's the Duke gave me 50 gold pieces, and hopefully, but I'm going to spend it all on a night of revelry so I can try to get into this castle. It's everything has a narrative hook to it, even the financial system. So but yeah, it's all interconnected that way. It's all to tell the story that is Blackbirds. and the players are just part of that story, really.
Yeah, it's tabletop is such an interesting world, and I heard it defined as this, and I wonder if you agree, because I always really enjoyed this definition, is that it's a tool and a platform for collaborative storytelling.
Yeah,
It's the ability to sit around a table with people and really kind of embody what the oldest form of entertainment is, which is sitting and telling stories back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's as an improviser, that's one of the things that really, that I find exciting about it, and why I love playing these games with improvisers. And I think, like, if you're good at role playing, you are generally a good improviser. Like, the two things are not mutually exclusive. There's definitely a lot of overlap on that Venn diagram.
Yeah, definitely. I think that even at its most, like, you're rolling dice versus one another just to min max. Like, that's still, to a degree, placing yourself in a story that's being collaboratively told.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Blackbirds in particular really makes it so every aspect of the story demands to be explored a little bit further. Because if everything is a plot hook, then you will never run out of sessions.
Well, hopefully. I mean, that's the idea, right? I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, our goal was to inspire people to tell stories. That was our ultimate goal. Is story hooks.
Yeah, and I think it's accomplished really, really well. It's absolutely a feature, not a bug.
Cool.
Everything in the book really is designed to prompt further thought and further ideas, and to further incorporate it into this larger narrative. And it's something that I'm really excited about. Is the game hits shelves, and as more and more people are playing it, the worlds that we're going to see emerge from that, and the stories that we're going to see emerge from that. Because even just we were at Gen Con really recently, and seeing the live plays and seeing people experiencing it for the first time, seeing the way that people gravitated to Theurgy, especially.
Yeah, I didn't know what people would think of it. I mean, I obviously love Theurgy. It's been my pet matheme in my brain for a long time, but it does seem like people like it. So that makes me very happy. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It was over the course of the convention. Much everybody who showed up at the booth had questions about it. Flipping through the quick start and asking about the magic and asking specifically about the outsiders was, I think, the question that we got the most. So I'm really excited for people to not only start playing it, also be able to see what voices all of the outsiders have. In particular, which I've heard some good ones so far from people playing it for the first time.
I love hearing anyone do an outsider voice. Like, that makes me. You have no idea how happy that makes me. Like, whenever and there's no right or wrong. Like, everybody's different interpretations to me is I just think it's so great. If people do like flibberty gibberit, they do the voice of the puppet. I think some people in the Discord were talking about actually getting puppets, building their own hand puppets to run the to run the quick play. And I was like, that is amazing. If I've inspired people to make puppets, I think I've made it as a game designer. I feel like that's as good as you can get.
If anybody out there makes flibberty gibbets and starts sending us pictures of them, I am going to be so incredibly pleased.
Right.
It's absolutely going to be just the daymaker of all daymakers. Is if we get people having little puppets that emerge, from the side of their table in the middle of a session to frighten people. That'll be really the cherry on top for Blackbirds.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Well, we are hitting 4:45 here. We've got about 10 minutes left. This is generally where any questions that we've had submitted, or if anybody who's currently listening live wants to toss up a hand to ask a question, they're more than welcome to. I'll keep an eye out for those. And in the meantime, I just have some rapid fire lightning round questions for you for this last little bit before we sign off, if that works.
Yeah.
All right. These are all just super basic and are all just TTRPG World questions. So feel free to ask for another one if one isn't rapidly available as an answer. What was your first experience with tabletop gaming?
It was definitely Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, it was Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice. Do you have a specific preference when it comes to either game running or playing as a character?
I always like to run the game rather than be a character. I like it when the players entertain me. Like, that's kind of why I do it. So yeah, that would be my preference.
Definitely, any opportunity to play as many characters as possible. Because as you're
there's that
game,
too. Yeah,
play more. Yeah, you get to be a whole lot more characters than just one.
It's the performer in me. It's the improviser in me, and I also like. I feel like I have a good handle on letting a story develop improvisationally, and I enjoy doing that. I like the back and forth of creating a story. in that way. So yeah, I think you just have more opportunities to do that as the as the game master, as the one who runs the game.
That being said, do you have any advice for game runners, kind of regardless of title, that you think is a quality or a skill that people running a game of Blackbirds or Dungeons and Dragons or Zweihander or whatever have you should really have?
I would say there's a thing that Keith Johnstone always says, and you can watch it. He has like a TED talk, but he says, "Don't do your best," is what he says, and he's really saying, like, for anyone who's a performer, or the stress in social situations for a lot of people, and if you try to do your best, if you try to be better than you are, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just be yourself. Take that pressure off of yourself. Don't do your best. It's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of it. It's a fun social event. It shouldn't be stressful. So that would be my main piece of advice. Don't do your best. Be obvious. Be boring. It's okay to be boring. Like, most people, if they're being boring, are way more entertaining than they think they are. So it's about taking that pressure off of yourself.
That's solid advice. As someone who's incredibly guilty of getting too much in their own head, even in a gaming setting, when it comes to playing a character, I think that's really, really solid advice.
Yeah.
Are there any games in particular that you have either run or played in as a character that informed how you worked on Blackbirds, or that gave you ideas that way?
I mean, kind of all of them. I did have a long-running, Call of Cthulhu campaign that, it was based on like some published scenarios, but then, it went kind of off the rails in a good way, where it became more improvisational, and it was just stuff that I was making up, at the table. And the more I played, the more I was like, you know what? Ideally, you just have a page of notes, and then the player's like a spark of an idea to go somewhere, and then you kind of make it up as you go. Those are always like the best play sessions, rather than something that I've really over prepared. And I don't know that I think preparation is helpful, but I don't know that everyone can get away with that. Definitely, like, allowing yourself to travel into the sandboxy parts of the world, or see where your players want to go, is always going to be more fun for everybody if you can do that.
Yeah, I think it definitely invites people to be a lot more collaborative. Do you think do you have any advice as far as striking a balance between not being over prepared and letting people improvise, and then just up with nothing?
Yeah, I mean, I never show up with nothing. Like I said, ideally, I feel like a page of notes is the right amount, having done this for a long time. But it's hard to say, because I have a lot of experience and I'm an improviser. I don't know that would necessarily work one, but at the same time, I feel like the less I prepare, the better the session is. Like, that seems to be more true as I go forward. And there's something also too, as an improviser, having done that for a long time, and this, once again, I feel like this is kind of an advanced thing. I don't know if everyone can use it, but like, I would go to perform, like, the past few years, I would think of removing myself from the performance. Like, Joseph should not show up on that stage. It should just be whatever the story needs, whatever the audience needs, whatever the other performers need. But me personally, so my goal is to just remove myself, and I think that helps. That's helpful in a role play session too. It's like, it doesn't matter what I want, and I'm not here to be myself. I'm here to be someone else and serve the other people at the table. Make sure that they're having an engaging experience. That is the most important thing.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's really, really solid advice. One more final lightning round question for you. Do you have any advice for people who are picking up Blackbirds for the first time?
Take your time reading it. Read a little bit at a time. It's a big book, so I think, yeah, give yourself time to kind of digest each section. And there's a lot in there. Don't feel like you have to use everything. Simplify it. Use a little bit of it. Just, like, dip your toe in. Don't feel like you have to, like, start a gigantic campaign against the oligarchs right away. Like, just play around with the system a little bit. Take your time. Simplify. That's what I would say.
Have fun with it.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's easy to be overwhelmed. We put a lot of words in there. Like, I wrote, I think, 200,000 words into that book, and they didn't even all end up in that book. So it's a big book, and I just did part of the book, so it's a big book.
It is 680 pages.
Yeah, we cut a lot.
Yeah, we got a lot in there.
We cut a lot.
BLACKBIRDS RPG is coming out very, very soon. We're really excited for it to hit shelves and get in people's hands so you can explore the lands of Erebus. We're going to wrap it up for this episode. Joseph, thank you again so much for joining us for this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone, this has been Joseph Limbaugh. I've been your anonymous host, and this has been Table Talk RPG. Thank you so much for joining us.